Welcome to our webinar, Teaching Coding and Game Design, Software and Resources from GameMaker. I hope you are all safe and well. Today, we're going to be looking at different methods of teaching GameMaker at different stages as students progress through their education. So, to the agenda. We'll start with a brief look at, a brief overview of GameMaker, and then look at the approaches to teaching game design. This includes some feedback from teachers who took part in a survey we did back in November 2020. Then we'll look at the different approaches taken for different student age groups. And for each grade age group, we will move on to the challenges brought about by COVID, how to adjust for home learning. We'll look at our approach to privacy and licensing, including the licensing support we are providing to all schools during COVID. And then we'll finish up with a Q&A and how to get your free license. Before we get to the educator resources, I'd like to provide a brief overview of GameMaker. In March of this year, the software was renamed from GameMaker Studio 2 to be simply GameMaker. There was no change to what the software was capable of, it was just a change of name. GameMaker was first developed in 1999 for use in education. It is an easy to learn 2D game making tool. Being 2D is important for learning because it removes much of the complexity associated with 3D and allows for faster progress. GML Visual, or GameMaker Language Visual, system for no-code development. So students can firstly understand the fundamental building blocks of the logic involved in game making, and then can progress to coding when they are ready. This allows them to progress seamlessly without hitting a wall. We have a custom language, which is referred to as GML code or GameMaker language code. This JavaScript-like language is based on C and designed to be easy to use for game design and be simple to pick up. GameMaker includes a number of editors. You can edit images, sprites, objects, and rooms. It also now includes the sequence animation tool. We have free teacher resources that teach the fundamentals of coding and help guide students to build their own games step by step. We have a large, supportive and active community with a forum and social media and beginners tips from the pros. We have big studio credibility. Students can see hundreds of real games made with GameMaker, with many that are multi-million sellers. The link here will take you to our showcase, which contains a lot of great games, all made with GameMaker, and some of which are award-winning games. We have over 1,500 new users sign up every single day, with 90% of them being beginners. GameMaker is a professional tool, but at the same time, it is a foundational tool. We sent out a questionnaire to our teachers at the start of November 2020. When we asked, how effective are game design lessons at teaching the following? You can see the positive results on this slide. The responses are consistent with the answers we received in a previous survey back in 2019, which asked a similar question. More than 75% of respondents rated the effectiveness of GameMaker at learning engagement, individual confidence and planning as somewhat effective or better. I'm often asked at what age GameMaker is taught. As you can see from the graph, there is a wide range of ages, but today we're going to be looking at the approaches taken broadly at ages 12 to 14, 15 to 16, and then 17 plus. Here is a graph showing how teachers approach the teaching of game design from a survey of educators who use GameMaker. As you can see, the teaching of GameMaker is very hands-on, so it suits kinesthetic learners. This is probably why we hear that students who struggle to engage in other areas of the curriculum are more motivated to engage with GameMaker game design lessons. I was recently talking to one of our teachers who provides alternative provisions to children who have behavioural difficulties and who can't be accommodated in mainstream education. And they told me that the Space Bubbles video tutorials, which are part of the free educator materials, are right at the level for his students. There are three approaches to teaching that I'm going to cover in this presentation. First, in blue, is make a game step by step using video. This is an approach that solely relies on video tutorials where users build and extend games, starting from no knowledge using GameMaker Visual, that was formerly drag and drop, and then progress into making these games using GML code. This is more appropriate in home learning situations, out of school camps and clubs where there's no formal framework needed for learning code. The students are learning the skills in a more hands-on way, so educators may need to provide some structure to what they've learned afterwards using the educator classroom materials. This requires less educator input overall. Then, in orange, make a game step by step with the teacher leading. In this approach, the educator provides guidance on the teaching of coding to fulfill a school curriculum, and this is reinforced with step-by-step tutorials. It comes with an assessment structure and homework. This is the approach taken by our educator resources and will require the educator to run online tutorials to go through the slides. And finally, in green, we have the approach of set a project for students to interpret. This is generally the approach we see taken with students aged between 15 and 16. This is actually the most popular approach and is used in more advanced curricula where students are required to show creativity and practical implementation of programming. For this approach, I will show you the resources that can provide guidance and inspiration. This graph shows how teachers evaluate the progress being made by students. Our free tutorials include fully documented teacher and peer evaluation criteria. Assessing progress can be a difficult part of home learning, but GameMaker enables easy sharing of games so educators can check on progress and make sure students are on the right track. In a 2019 survey, we got some great feedback from educators on how using game design has aided the education process at their school. Here are some excerpts. The kids are happier. There aren't behavioral problems like there are in other classes. Games require creatives and tech teams to work together with a common goal to solve. While they build games, they also build friendships, learn to overcome hardships, and create something meaningful. My students very much enjoy the game design unit that I teach. Personally, I think game design is effective at improving problem solving, attention to detail, and teamwork. The students have learned to solve complex or abstract problems by themselves. The content provides a sufficient challenge and helps develop persistence and attention to detail. It has certainly enabled some students who are otherwise disengaged from the curriculum to re-engage. So, what about the students? What do they get out of it? What do they enjoy most? Here are some responses submitted by their teachers. Definitely the end, where they finally tried their own game, even if it was the most simple game in the world. Learning to overcome challenges and have a working program. The students love to show their parents what they have made by themselves. They are very proud if they get ideas done and improve their skills. The feeling of accomplishment when completing a game and watching others play the game they have built. Just being able to create an original game, then watch their peers play the game is such a high for these kids. To be able to say, I made that, is a real ego boost. Creating games, making rapid progress in a short span of time. Thinking up new games, brainstorming is normally a pain to get students to do, but not when it involves game design. Seeing their ideas take shape. So the benefits of making games include achieving elements of a curriculum, student engagement, student creativity, teamworking, problem solving, and persistence. I will finish this section by sharing an article I found recently on why it is important that young people learn game design, how it improves their learning performance and prepares them for work. So, to look at some of the different teaching styles. At age 12 to 14, school curriculums are generally focused on teaching students the fundamentals of coding and giving them engaging ways to put these newly learned skills into practice. To this end, we created space bubbles. This slide lists everything that's included in the materials. Space Bubbles is a GML visual project-based scheme of work where students work on one project over the course of 8 one-hour lessons, with 30 minutes being spent on learning code and 30 minutes being spent on making the Space Bubbles game itself. Over these lessons, students are taught how to program by recreating their own version of the game Space Bubbles using these video tutorials. Aimed at children aged 12 to 14, but can be used for older or younger depending on the skill set, it is a good place to start. It was developed by Terry Watts, who is a teacher and was formerly a game designer. In a home learning environment, the lessons can be taught using Zoom, and the students progress using the video tutorials. They're able to export their game, submit their game for evaluation by a teacher, and complete their self-assessment forms. Each lesson has its own starter project that contains everything as it should have been at the end of the previous lesson. So if a student gets stuck in a particular lesson, they won't fall behind as they can move on to the next one. The curriculum topics covered include programming, key concepts and principles, sequencing, selection statements and iteration, modeling the state and behavior of real-world problems and physical systems. For example, one of the homework exercises is to find the correct order of a set of listed steps to successfully make a cup of hot chocolate. It also contains information on teacher review, self-review, and peer review. Moving on to video tutorials which do not require a teacher to lead. This is Space Rocks, the first of our consumer tutorials where students can learn on their own. This game is based on the classic Asteroids game and was created for beginner level, with many of the same mechanics as Space Bubbles. It covers both GML visual and GML code, so you can make a game using GML visual and then remake it in GML code to better understand how the logic translates between the two. This is an official tutorial made by one of our community educators, Friendly Cosmonaut, so it also helps to introduce a different teaching style to your students and includes an intro to GameMaker itself. The focus of this is to retain engagement through quick wins. Within the first few minutes, the students will have created a ship and got it moving. Then they're just layering on additional game elements. Space Mods builds on Space Rocks. It also has GML visual, GML code versions. This additional content can also support students who need more help with the Space Bubbles extension and challenge tasks. It contains 12 additional videos, about 2 hours, explaining how to use and implement power-ups, enemy ships, cameras, parallax or layered backgrounds to give a full 3D effect, and visual effects like particles and screen shake. There's a nice quote here from a user who felt that we're able to start making their own modifications to their games once they had completed some of the Space Mod videos. Breakthrough is a brick breaker game. It's taught for both GML visual and GML code, so students have the opportunity to develop the game with either method. Around half of all projects being worked on in GameMaker are in GML visual, so there's no need to rush to GML code before you're ready. You and your students can move on once you feel prepared to do so. This is a totally different style of game, but shares fundamental concepts with the tutorials I've mentioned so far, and the teaching is still at a beginner level. Fire Jump is one of our latest tutorials. It's a full game tutorial for GML visual that introduces the basics of GameMaker to create your own infinite platformer game. It comes as a 4-part tutorial series. Please check it out after the webinar. Click the link on this slide for more information. And on that page, there is a link to play the web version of the game. From ages 15 to 16, we see school curriculum focused more on the creative applications of coding with GameMaker. With project-based tutorials, you can set a theme and see how your students interpret it, then judge it based on a marking scheme. The scheme could, for example, include the following: interpretation of the theme, complexity or functionality used, playability, coding practices, creativity. Here are some links to some resources for tools, artwork, audio, and a few other things that could be used as the basis for game creation. The Global Game Jam link at the bottom of this slide is particularly noteworthy, as they run the world's largest game jam each year. We also have blog articles that can provide inspiration. They're from our team and pro developers alike. They can fit in well with the Space Bubbles and Space Rocks tutorials. They cover a wide range of topics from planning, creating game mechanics, how-tos, getting your game finished, how to make your code neat, and many more subjects. There is no shortage of guides or inspiration on YouTube, as there are users with a wide range of skill levels that have made tutorials for many aspects of game making. I've provided a link here to just a sample of the games and tutorials that can be found easily on YouTube. All GameMaker features and functionality are fully documented with examples in our online manual. There's a link at the bottom of this slide that will take you to our manual. One of the problems with students aged 15 to 16 who are home learning is that group learning and projects can be more difficult to achieve. To assist, we have official tools videos, tutorials that are accessible through our YouTube channel. These take you through all the tools and editors and demonstrate how they work. If you're looking for a more expansive set of game tutorials, I would recommend this developer, who in this set of video tutorials will explain how to make a platformer game. It starts at a beginner level using GameMaker language. Our blog page also links the developer's YouTube, where they explain a lot of development concepts with practical examples. This is Sean Spalding's platformer tutorial series. They are the developer I was mentioning in the previous slide. This is a 27-part tutorial series that will guide users all the way from a blank project to having a working platformer, a complete game with lots of effects, and also a menu system. We have new education materials that were just released last year. This is a more detailed GML code-based game design tutorial for artists and people starting to learn game design. This is aimed at a college or university level. In this series, you are guided on how to make a game called Little Town, which is an adventure playing game, created by university lecturer and game designer Ben Rivers. Ben teaches game design at the Faculty of Design at OCAD in Ontario. These materials include a detailed booklet and video tutorials, which students can use to make the game in 8 one-hour lessons. In total, there are about 9 hours of videos. We also provide an instructor guide, which is a 306-page PDF as a set of step-by-step tutorials, a guide on how to teach this, and how to evaluate student progress. Little Towns utilize some of the more advanced functionality within GameMaker, including our sequence animation tool. All of our licenses provide access to the sequence animation tool. For older students, aged 16 plus, they can use our community forum as a way to engage with our community for assistance with any problems they may be having with their projects, or to discuss any other ideas they might have about game design. Who knows? Maybe someday they'll be able to help other developers who are just starting out on their game development journey. We have 3 types of licenses available, and these can be purchased through StudiCap. First of all, there is the Educator license, which provides access to desktop exports, which are Windows, Mac, and Linux. The Educator Plus, which provides access to desktop and web exports. And finally, Achiever, which provides access to desktop, web, mobile, UWP, and PlayStation 4. There are 1 or 2 year options available. The seats are concurrent use, so they can be used for multiple classes. GameMaker can be used on PC or Mac, not yet Chromebook, but due to the overwhelming demand from these webinars, we have a version in development. As you can see from this slide, which shows the results of a survey from November 2020, at that time, only 5% of teachers were unaffected by COVID. As a consequence, we have provided support to our users throughout COVID. Currently, until the end of June 2022, all seat licenses can be used by 5 students simultaneously. So 30 seats that would usually have been used in a computer lab can be used simultaneously by 150 students learning from home. Hopefully we won't need to extend beyond June, but we will look at this near to the time to see if this measure needs extended again. Privacy in education is very important to us. The teacher will act as a seat manager and they will receive 1 perpetual educator desktop license, which they can use to investigate GameMaker and understand the required setup of the software within the school's specific network environment. The seats that are created are entirely anonymous. The only information needed for a seat are a username that you set and a password that you also set. No personally identifiable information is collected on seat users. There's more information in our privacy policy and a specific section on our approach to education, if you follow the link on this slide. We're also approved for use by educationframework.com. As a thank you for attending our webinar and making it all the way to the end, you are eligible to receive a free teacher license. Christy will send you the link or click the button when we send you the slides for step-by-step instructions. At this point, I'm ready to try and answer any questions that you may have.
One of the questions is, can the seats also be used for after-school activities or clubs?
Of course. You are able to use the seats for any educational purpose you want, be that after-school clubs, clubs at the weekend, camps you may run. It's really up to you once you've purchased the licenses.
Okay, and then I know you have all these support materials for teaching the students, but if I am an educator who's not very familiar with, game design myself, what do you recommend for getting me up to speed the quickest?
The tutorial section on our website itself is always a good place to start, as that does have some foundational videos, but YouTube I'd always recommend as a good place to go to as well. Just search how to or basics of GameMaker, and our passionate community most likely will have a video on there that will help guide you through the first steps.
Okay, and then another question is, our tech department is leery of desktop installs. Is there a web-based version only?
Unfortunately, we don't have a web-based version of the software at this time.
Okay, let me just make sure. I think that was the last of the questions. Yep, I think that was all the questions.
Fantastic, thank you.
And then thank you so much, Kevin, and thank you everyone for joining us today. If you do have any questions, you can contact me at Studica. You can email info@Studica or marketing@Studica. I will also be sending a follow-up email that'll include a link to the recording. You'll get all the slides in this presentation and all the links that Kevin mentioned, including the link for the free license. So please keep an eye out for that. And thank you so much for your time and have a great day.